And the theme this week is let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Hey, Dee, did you know that beginning in 2025, the books that were written and published in 1929 are now in the public domain?
Nope. Are there any gardening books?
Well, the one that comes up in my searches is The Gardener's Bed Book, Short and Long Pieces to be Read in Bed by Those Who Love Green Growing Things by Richardson Wright.
So we've talked about that one before, and Timber Press republished it a few years ago, and that's the option I have.
As do I.
And it's a good one.
And it's easy to find some copies.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of good things, shall we start this episode? Because I think it's going to be a good one.
I will get it started. Welcome to the Garden Angelist, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana, where I have a suburban garden measured in square feet. It's about a third of a snow-covered acre.
And I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden an acre and a half out of 7.5 acres out in the country. And I just sent you a picture of my lake that's outside our property down the hill, which is my view from my desk. And it looks like it has stars in it. It's weird because it's icy and it's starting to thaw. And I guess those are leaves. I don't know what those are. Anyway.
We call ourselves Garden Angelists because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening and we want you to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and sometimes the ugly. And so that's enough of who, what, when, where. Shall we move on to this week's episode?
We shall. Hello, Dee.
Hey, Carol. How is your garden?
Well, we are recording on Sunday, June the 12th. My garden is completely snow covered, but last Sunday, just as it started to snow for the first time, I ran outside and I dug up about 5 lily of the valley pips and I potted them up. And so I'm waiting for them to do something. Since then, I've cleared off the driveway. I think I've been out there 5 times to keep up with it. So I kind of thought about sorting seeds, but didn't actually sort seeds. But then I know that you and I both got the big envelope full of All America seed selections for us to grow. Oh, goodness. It was like Christmas.
It was like Christmas. I even posted about it in my stories, and there was some exciting stuff in there.
There is. And we'll talk about that. Maybe we'll talk about that next week when we have a chance to really look through our seed stashes.
Good.
So my microgreens are looking quite good, and I've eaten them every day this week. And behind me, what do you see behind me, Dee? What do you see?
It's over hard there, to see.
Behind my shoulder there.
Oh, this shoulder. That looks like your poinsettia.
That is my poinsettia, and it has the prettiest, more pinkish than red bracts on it. But it turns a little bit every day, and I keep thinking, I'm going to move you back to the sunroom, but you won't get as much light. And then I thought, well, it looks pretty good there, so I'm just going to leave it.
It's the healthiest one I've ever seen because, it wasn't forced into flowering or coloring, and it's not been messed with, and it looks super healthy.
Yeah, and it has some nice color on it. So the wax bulb amaryllis, today is the last day for the last one, so that's gone. But the ones that we got from the Garden of Words, the white one that's in a pot,
yes.
Mine has 2 big fat flower buds showing, so pretty soon that's going to be blooming, and that's about it.
Cool.
How about you?
So at my house, we had a little greenhouse snafu, which I wrote about in a blog post.
Or I read.
People can read about it. And I'm happy to say that in spite of the low temperature, it must not have gotten very low for very long because damage was minimal. And then, but I should mention this, my big fountain in the potager is all iced up because that same problem happened there because we lost electricity for several hours and then it got extremely cold. So even though I have heaters in it, the heaters weren't on, and so it froze solid. So we'll see what happens there. I just feel like, there's nothing you can do about it. Yada, yada, yada. Okay. So let's see. I've been repotting in the greenhouse because some things need to be in bigger pots and they've started to grow again because we have passed the winter solstice, right?
Yep. Days are getting
And
longer.
so days are getting longer. Hallelujah. And I also sowed some seeds indoors for calendula, violas, and pansies, which is a little late, and onions and shallots.
Excellent.
So I did that. And then I just, as a fun thing, after it snowed, I threw down some kale seeds on top of the snow because I thought, it can't hurt anything. And
No.
kale is very, very, very cold tolerant. So maybe it'll come up. I have a lot of kale. And that also will remind me when I talk about our book this week, it ties into kale.
Okay. I'll try to remember. Or I should probably take a note if I really want to remember.
I think I put it in the notes. I think we're okay.
All right. Let's play favorites then.
You go first.
So my favorite this week is sound, or actually quiet, because when you have this much snow on the ground, and I would say, there's been a little tiny bit of melt off. I'd say there's about 10 inches of snow out there, maybe a foot.
That's a lot of snow.
It is a lot of snow, but it is very, very quiet out there. And you go out at night and the sound is all muffled by the snow. But off in the distance, I can hear that old hoot owl, hoot, 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 which is kind of fun. But anyway, that's my favorite. It's just
I read on Facebook
quiet.
that it's mating season. And so they're more talkative than usual. I read that on one of those ornithological websites. My favorites?
Yeah.
So my favorite are my 3 red amaryllises on the mantle, which I took a picture of. I think it's in the blog post and we'll put it in the newsletter. This is the second series. So the one Katie gave us would be the third series. And they're in my blue and white pots and they're just really pretty. I got to cut one deal off, but they just keep blooming because there are those great big bulbs. And then the other thing is the moon. We've also had a bunch of snow for us, and we're supposed to get more snow next weekend. And it's the moon yesterday came up in the middle, started coming up middle of the day. And it was so big and beautiful and white and full. And then at nighttime, when I got home, it was beautiful and yellow and full.
Well, remind me to talk about that. And I do have notes in our rabbit hole. But I did want to say one thing about your amaryllis. So I saw it on a blog post. It's in Dutch because the person writes in Dutch. And if I really want to read what she wrote, I just send it through Google Translator.
Yeah, because you just got to click that button. Yeah.
But she showed how they take amaryllis that are starting to like flop over and they turn it upside down and they kind of like slice the stem into sections and then it kind of curls up. And then you can set that with the curled up stem in a bowl for another kind of display. I'll send you a picture.
You're going to have to find that link because everybody's going to want to see that.
It was a very interesting way if you wanted to do something a little bit different. And you could hit the Google Translate button, or you could just look at the pictures and figure out what they're doing because she has some excellent pictures.
Okay. I just put notes in our notes for you to go find that for everybody.
I will. Question of the week.
I love how we do that. So that's a little behind the scenes. When one of us is talking, the other one sometimes updates the notes so that we don't forget stuff. Exactly. And usually it's Carol doing that because I'm always going off script. Sorry. But today,
that's all right.
You went off script.
Well, I got it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Okay. Whatever.
Good job. Question of the week. This is from fan mail. Are plant probiotics a thing? That was the first I ever heard of that.
Yeah.
I had a nursery manager tell me that they make a big difference. I remained skeptical. Thanks, Jeannie. So you wrote.
I did a quick search, and my assumption is that when they say plant probiotics, they're actually talking about packaged soil microbes to add to your soil or to your compost pile because soil microbes are very important. And my assumption is they call them probiotics because that's a term that people are used to using when they buy like bacteria to ingest in pill form for your own body. It's kind of the same concept. So I found a really nice article at Ohio State Extension understanding the soil microbes. And they say microorganisms abound in the soil and are critical to decomposing organic residues and recycling soil nutrients. So if plant probiotics are soil microbes, and I think they are, they make a difference.
They do. But I want to point out something Steve Owens along that line. Steve Owens wrote a few years ago that I thought was really helpful. When the whole mycorrhizae craze started,
Yes.
and they were putting mycorrhizae in everything, one of the things he pointed out was that if you are dealing with your own garden, it is better to use the microbes or mycorrhizae, either one, of your own area.
Yes.
So when
Exactly.
you use decomposed leaves or leave your debris on your garden or any of those things, your own microbes, which doesn't microbes include both like little fungi and other things too? Isn't it a more broad term?
Yeah, it's bacteria, it's fungi, it's probably something that escapes me, but yeah, it's probably anything
It
microscopic.
means everything, right? So he was saying, the ones that are in your own soil, and he was kind of questioning, do you want to add foreign ones to your stuff? Now, I can see why in potting soil, maybe, I don't know. You know what? Here's the deal. Just buy a good quality potting soil. Just put natural things on your garden. Don't worry about this. That's my attitude.
Right. And if you do decide to buy something labeled plant probiotics, like you said, for potting soils,
yeah,
make sure you're getting it from a reputable source. It should be OMRI certified, which ensures that it's organic. So that's
all
the
those
answer
things.
to that.
Okay, now we have another question. Did you want to do it this week or you want to keep it?
No, I'll do this one because it's timely. So I was at a birthday party, and one of the people there was from Southern Indiana, and they had a lot of ice.
Ugh.
And so
Ice, baby. And I hate ice. It's the worst.
she said, what should we have done with the tree limbs that had iced and were bending to the ground? And my answer was, don't
Leave
do
them alone.
anything. Leave it alone, because if the ice is really heavy and it's going to break, you propping it up isn't going to keep it from breaking. And you might actually break it if it was maybe just going to bend. So leave it alone unless it's like blocking a path and you really have to clear it. And the same with brushing snow off of evergreen boughs. Leave it alone. Nature plans to bend down to the weight of that stuff. And so her husband thanked me because he had told her that, and she thought she should do something. He says, I owe you one, because he was proven to be right.
And I was going to say, if you feel like you have to do something, be very, very gentle.
Yeah.
Don't get a broom out there and knock it off.
No.
And if it's ice, you know what? We had that huge ice storm in 2020, and I just let mayhem happen the way it happened because there wasn't anything you could do. It's sort of like the fires. There's nothing you can do. All right. Quote time.
Here it comes. Snowflakes are one of nature's most fragile things, but just look what they can do when they stick together. Vesta M. Kelly.
Yes, and you're having a lot of snow this year, and
so far,
I guess Oklahoma starting in January is going to have a lot of snow.
So our flower topic is National Garden Bureau is got the year of, and it is the year of calendula, and you just sowed some calendula seeds. So tell us what's unusual about those seeds.
Well, they're curved. Are you talking about what they actually look like? The
C shape. Yeah, they have that. They look like a little C's. Yeah, the letter C.
Yeah, I thought you were going to make me tell you what varieties I did. I know I did Solar Flashback, but I did another one too, and I'll be honest, I don't remember the name of it. Here's the thing about calendula. Whenever you hear, and we've talked about this before, whenever you hear European gardeners talk about marigolds, they're talking about pot marigolds, which is calendula.
Right.
I didn't grow calendula until I was in my 40s, and it's because it's a cold weather crop, and I just didn't. And so now I do, and I've done it both ways. I've direct sowed it outside, and I've also potted it up and then set it outside before it's hot, but it gives it a little bit more of a head start before, you've got to time it just right. It's very cold tolerant, but if we get a really, really cold, like 20 degrees type deal, then you better cover it with hoop houses and make sure those are covered to the ground and do some other things. Like everything about gardening, at least in my state, it's all, especially in the spring, it's all like you just do the best you can. So
You do. Now
and
they
I do
have,
that with nasturtiums now too. I plant
yeah,
them up instead of
yes.
putting them outside.
So calendula have an interesting history, and
They do.
National Garden Bureau has given us 3 pieces of historical information.
Hmm. So the first piece is that they were cherished by the Egyptians for their healing properties and beauty. And so to add on to that, their calendula is still used in lots and lots of natural beauty products. And it's
Yes.
also used in healing lotions. So if you get a natural healing lotion that's to heal cracks, because we're all dealing with dry air. You and I talked about that before we came on. A lot of hand creams have calendula in them.
That they do. And then they say that calendula has transcended borders to become a global favorite among gardeners. And it gets its name from the Latin calende, which symbolizes its perpetual blooming cycle with fresh blooms unfurling each month in a vibrant display of nature's artistry.
Yeah, and the calendula I grew last month, which was last year. I set it out in March, I think, and it took a long time to flower, but once it did, it flowered and flowered until late June.
That is
So,
nice.
and then I pulled it because I got tired of looking at it.
They also call it poor man's saffron because it is a source of yellow dye, and it will give cooked dishes the same hue as saffron. And saffron, as we know, is extremely expensive. So that is another thing it can be used for, is dyeing and adding yellow color to soups and other dishes.
Right. You can use it instead of saffron in your paella if you want to.
That's right.
For example.
Now, there were a couple other things they had put in there in the Did You Know section. So I read somewhere that no, that's something else. I read that the beneficial insects such as pirate bugs, Sophidiae, I don't know what that is, Sophidiae, and microwasps, siphid flies, microwasps. It attracts those beneficial insects to your garden.
Yeah.
And it's a natural hair rinse to bring out natural blonde highlights, which I don't
golden
have.
highlights.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's in
I
a
did
lot of
not know that.
shampoos. So you'll see it in lots of places, and I think it isn't calendula's name, Calendula officinalis.
Yes.
I think that's right. So you'll see the ingredient, especially now that I read every ingredient of everything I put on my body, because I have to make sure it's vegan or at least just has beeswax, but no mammal ingredients. And also I have to make sure that it doesn't have carrageenan in it, which is a red algae. So by doing that, I've read a lot, Calendula officinalis, rosemary. There's a lot of things in your beauty products if they're natural.
So they say that it is easy to direct sow the calendula in early spring, but you can also start it indoors and then transplant it. I may do some winter sowing of the calendula, I think.
It's easy to grow. It'd be a great thing to winter sow.
Because I think it is quite possible that I got some calendula seeds from National Garden Bureau as All America selection. It's possible that I'm imagining that as well.
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I could look up under our photos because I took a picture of the seed list, and then
you and I have different seed lists.
Not that much different.
I didn't get any nasturtiums, Dee. I'm kind of jealous. You had some nasturtiums on your list.
I got 3 packages of nasturtiums.
I didn't get any that I can remember. They're in the other room.
Okay, well, you know what? I took those direct on Instagram, so I don't have those pictures anyway. So, what else do you want to say about calendula? Anything?
Full sun, like many annuals, if you pinch them back, you'll get a bigger, bushier plant, more flowers. They don't have to have a lot of additional fertilizer. They, tend to grow in Mediterranean climates is where they're from. Yeah. And in fact, overhead watering, you can get powdery mildew on them.
Yeah, because they've got those fuzzy leaves that are kind of gray-green.
Uh-huh.
And that just tells you right off, anytime you got fuzzy leaves, and if they're gray-green, what does that say?
Mediterranean
drought tolerant.
Yes.
Drought tolerant. Don't spray me with a bunch of water. I hate it.
Also, if you deadhead regularly, you'll get more blooms. And then oftentimes, now in your climate, they may just die off when it gets hot. But in my climate, they may just stop blooming for a while, but then they would start blooming again when it got cooler.
So last year, the ones I grew, I used to just pull them out and I let them go to see how long they would go. And they just kept on, but they got ugly and the blooms got really, really small. And so finally I did pull them out.
Now, as per usual, National Garden Bureau has got a ton of beautiful pictures. And so I don't normally grow calendula. It just kind of escapes my notice. But I'm thinking at the moment that in honor of the year of the calendula, Carol is going to grow some calendulas in her garden.
You should. They're pretty.
I think I want to grow one of the mixes. They have one on here, and maybe I'll put a picture of this. They have one on here called Field Grown Mix, and then another one called Kinglet that has mixed colors. Those look awfully pretty to me. Awfully pretty.
They're very pretty. Very pretty.
So
cool.
That is calendula, the National Garden Bureau year of the annual 2025.
Okay.
Quote time.
A good friend is a connection to life, a tie to the past, a road to the future, the key to sanity in a totally insane world. Lois Wise favorite.
Do you think that this is a totally insane world, Dee?
I think sometimes it feels that way.
Yeah. Yeah, it
I don't think it is, but I think sometimes it feels that way. I mean, if you just look at the natural disasters we've had in the United States this past year and the beginning of this year, I bet the poor people in Western North Carolina, the people in Georgia, and the people in California feel that way right now.
I would think that they would, but we are going to talk about what?
But friends have come out of the woodwork to help everybody. So see, there you go. There's the good friend. Brought it right back. Vegetable. There you go. Our vegetable is an herb. Keep going.
Borage.
I love borage. And guess what? Borage officianalis.
Just like calendula officinalis.
Which means common or official. I don't know.
Right.
So here's the thing about borage. Once you plant it, you'll always have it.
Exactly. It self-sows and there's nothing you're going to do to stop it.
But it's easy to pull up.
So easy.
Early. Do it early before the little spiky hairs come out. Because those kind of hurt your fingers if you're gardening without gloves. It has them on the underside of the leaves and on the main stem.
Yeah.
Believe me,
yeah.
I know
I've never got bit, so to speak, or stuck by my.
So easy to grow. Bumblebees love it.
They do.
Blue flowers, so charming in ice cubes. So
I've
charming.
never put them in ice cubes, but I'll take your word for it.
So charming. You just put them in the center of the water and freeze them, and they're very charming in your iced tea. Or you can also use them on top of salads. They taste like cucumber. How am I doing so far? I haven't even read the notes.
You're doing really good. Now, borage, the reason we're doing it, it's an annual flower, and it is completely edible, the flowers. And compared to comfrey from last week, which we decided was not edible, but they both share the common thing of they are added to compost because they tend to enrich compost more than other plants. In the case of borage, though, it's mostly potassium that gets added from the leaves. It gets stored in the leaves.
Okay. You know what I do with it? Nothing.
What?
I don't add it purposely to my compost. I just enjoy it until I'm tired of it. And then I pull it out in late summer when it's ugly.
Yeah. I had some growing for the longest time. I mean, our fall lasted so long that I pulled out blooming borage late in the fall, later than I've ever.
I know, it was crazy, right?
Yes. So the other thing about it is they said it can be a trap crop for aphids.
Okay. I can see that.
I can see that too, which you'll have so much borage. If it gets attacked by a few aphids, it's not a big deal.
I'll be honest, I've never seen damage from aphids, but I believe them. Okay.
I believe them too. And then if you look up the medicinal properties, they're similar to comfrey, that people use it as to treat skin conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And they make oil of borage. And I think that would take a lot of work, more than we're going to do.
I wouldn't do it. No. But you know what it's in? Cosmetics. I
Exactly.
see it all the time too. So it's another great plant, and it's just pretty. It's a pretty, I mean, the leaves aren't, has gray blue foliage. It's kind of big, but it's so much fun to go out there and the beautiful flowers hang down and the bees
Uh-huh.
get up underneath them. And I don't know, it just makes you feel like everything's right with the world.
Exactly. And it's amazing though, for as big a plant as it becomes,
Yeah.
it just
Tiny.
seems like it comes down to a little tiny point and there is not much root supporting that big plant. Because
No.
that's what makes it so easy to just like, oh, you know what? You're in the path. One time too many. Out you go.
Yeah. Out you go. So is a spreader, just like comfrey was a spreader. The difference is it's annual. Comfrey is perennial, right? When it's
That's
perennial.
correct. Yes.
And on top of that, comfrey is considered aggressive or perhaps invasive. Borage, it's neither one of those things.
No.
It's just a nice self-sower, the color of sky.
And in the kinds of gardens that I think you and I have, kind of
It's
relaxed,
okay. Yeah.
self-sowing is perfectly acceptable for many different types of flowers, including borage.
I think that's kind of nature's present. As long as it's not something hard to pull up
Exactly.
or some irritating weed like mulberry weed.
Yeah. Which is
I hate mulberry weed. So, but there's no use for it at all. All right.
No.
So do a quote. That's borage, another unusual herb.
What on earth could be more luxurious than a sofa, a book, and a cup of coffee? Anthony Trollope.
Amen, brother.
I'd say it would be more luxurious to have a sofa, a book, and a cup of tea, but that would just be
I like
me.
both. I can go either way. I
You
swing
got the
tea or
book.
coffee.
You got the
Oh, I
book.
do have the book. It's my turn to do the book. Okay, so here's the deal. For Christmas, one of my children got me a teapot and 2 cookbooks because the kids know I love to read cookbooks. And the cookbook they gave me, I had never heard of. She bought it at Williams Sonoma, and it's called La Vie Rustique, and it's by a lady named Georgianne Brennan, and the subtitle is Cooking and Living in the French Style.
Oui, oui.
This beautiful, beautiful book came out in 2015. And
Nice.
at that point, Georgianne, who I didn't know, she is quite famous. She's written a bunch of cookbooks and a bunch of really beautiful things. Like, look at this blood orange rustic tart.
That
Isn't
is
it
very
pretty?
beautiful.
Yeah, French food is not only good, it's also attractive. So what I think the reason that Megan got this for me was because I can't eat everything in here because there is some pork. But like here's cherry chutney with duck breast. That sounds yummy. I think she got it for me because it has to do with cooking from a potager, cooking from your orchard, all of these things. And she kind of details, she lived in Provence for a while, not Megan, Georgianne. And she kind of developed a lifestyle like that. And then she moved back to California with her husband and kids. And they had a farm in Northern California. But I did a deep dive on her before we started to meet. And so not only is she famous and written a bunch of cookbooks, now we're going to talk about kale.
Yes.
Specifically lanceolato kale. She had a company in 1980, a seed company called Le Marché. And Le Marché launched in 1980. I don't know how I never heard of it, except I was graduating from high school. So I probably wasn't interested, right?
Probably. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, anyway, she's the one, according to Wall Street Journal, and I quote, Ms. Brennan intrigued and inspired American farmers and chefs by ferreting out and importing the first seeds for lanceolato kale, Chiaga beets, and a number of radicchio varieties.
Interesting.
Did you know that?
I did not.
So when I picked this to do as our book this week, I didn't know any of that. I just thought, oh, it's about cooking from your house, from your home and how nice it is and all that kind of stuff. And then I read that and I was like, good Lord, she's a garden writer, sort of. You know what I mean?
In many ways, yeah. If she was introducing new vegetables to the American cuisine.
Yeah. It was really cool. So the article that I linked to with the Wall Street Journal It is about when this book came out, and I still haven't finished it all because, they write really long articles, but they asked her a lot of questions and she had some really interesting answers. And I thought just a lot of here's the only thing I don't love about French cookbooks. The French use everything in their cooking, all the parts of the animal. And there's always a section about using all the innards. And while I do love chicken livers, I really do. I even like beef liver, but I'll never eat that again. I'm just not a big innards person. Not really.
I am also not a big innards person, but this does not surprise you.
No, it does not. So anyway, I'm going to, and there's a lot of dairy in it because, dairy, but I know how to sub all that stuff because I've been doing it a long time. So that's this week's book, La Vie Rustique, and it's Georgianne Brennan. And they kept their farm in Provence for a long, long time.
Cool.
But she was 71 in 2015. So she's, quite
up to 81.
Now. 81. Yeah. So I don't know what she's doing these days. She does have a website called potsandpans.com.
Interesting. And so because the book is 10 years old, we could only find it on Amazon. So we'll leave a link to that. And Dee, your assignment is to pose that book somewhere in your kitchen and take a pretty picture of it.
Oh, no problem. I can totally do that. It's a very pretty book. And the next week, do we know what we're doing next week for our book, or am I doing another one of my cookbooks?
We will discuss that later. So that'll be a big mystery.
She doesn't want to talk about it right now. That's a mystery. All right. So there you go.
Do a quote.
So it's still my turn. Okay. Winter reminds us that everyone and everything needs some quiet time. And that's Katrina Mayer. And that's true.
That is true. Very apt quote
Carol
for this
found
time of year.
dirt.
I did. And so I have a very fancy rain gauge, and you have to take it in before you get freezing and thawing, or it'll crack it, and that'll be $40 out the window. So I never really know quite what the rain total is, and I can never find it. And it seems like the weather sites will never let you go and see what was yesterday. So I finally found an app and a website where you can get historical rainfall totals for any zip code in the United States. It's called raindrop.farm. So I downloaded the app, and I'm working off the free version. There's a paid version. I'm working off the free version. And so I can tell you that as of today, the 12th, we've gotten 0.90 inches of rain, which, by the way, came down as snow, near as I can tell. So that's my dirt. If anybody else is like, what kind of rain did we get? Plus, they'll show you how much you've gotten for the month, what your monthly average is, and they'll also show you what your yearly total is and what your yearly average is. And we came in almost spot on for the average amount of rainfall last year, within
That's
tenths
interesting.
of an inch.
So in Oklahoma, because we are weather aware and we have the National Weather Service here and Norman and all those things, we have something called the Mesonet. And the Mesonet, you can look up rainfall as much as you want to, and you can find out all the pieces for your area.
I bet you can for my area too, but I didn't know.
I don't know
it.
if you can or not. No, the Mesonet's only Oklahoma.
Oh,
so,
well, there you go.
But here's why. Because it's run, I can't remember who runs it, but it's run because we have farmers, lots of farmers. And so they need to know how dry the soil is and all this other stuff.
Sure.
And because we have tornadoes so much, they have stations set up all over the state. And they got started a long time ago. I wrote a blog post about it one time. But here's the funny part is if you're on Facebook, the Mesonet is on Facebook too. And they're hilarious. They post hilarious forecasts. And the National Weather Service, I think, got jealous. So now they're posting hilarious forecasts too. And it's all this tongue-in-cheek stuff. And so a lot of times I'll share it on Facebook or I'll just laugh myself silly because they just write silly stuff. Sometimes it's Star Wars related, just all kinds of things.
That's interesting. Well, raindrop.farm, I think farmers could use it. Again, there's a paid version. You can get a lot of more detailed information. But, the other thing I had downloaded on my phone, I don't know if you have it. It's called weatherkitty.com, I think.
I have Weather Kitty. Yeah.
And so it always shows a picture of a cat in in the weather, whatever the weather
Yeah.
is. It's fun.
I love Weather Kitty.
So anyway,
Of course
that's
I
our
have Weather
dirt.
Kitty.
Now
In
I'm going to do a
fact,
quote.
okay,
What are you
please
doing now,
do.
Dee? You're pulling up Weather Kitty?
I pulled up Weather Kitty for you.
Oh, it's so cute.
It's a kitten, little mackerel tabby. Okay, you have a
I'm going to
quote?
do a quote. Collect things you love that are authentic to you, and your house becomes your story. Aaron Flett.
Well, I've certainly done that. This one lady walked into my house one time, and her house, she used a designer to do the whole thing.
Uh-huh.
And so she came into my house and she looked around and she goes, "Your house is a house full of collected things." And she looked amazed because, she just bought her stuff.
Right.
And my
right.
house I've lived here 36 years and it's got lots of books and, I collect china and all kinds of things. And I had to laugh because I don't know if that was a compliment or if she was giving me a hard time. Who cares?
Well, it reminds me of the Agatha Raisin Mysteries by M.C. Beaton. When
Yeah.
she moved to the Cotswolds, she had her home decorated, to have a certain look.
Yeah.
And then over time, she realized that this stuff isn't me. And, she gradually would start to get rid of it and get the stuff that she really enjoyed. So I thought that was
Yeah.
interesting.
I think everybody who wants to should do that.
Exactly. I am all for having your home reflect your own interests, and those staged homes, with all the grays and tans, they just turn me. I just like, you're not really living in that, people. You cannot be.
Or the kitchens of people who don't cook at all, but like it's got a sub-zero fridge and
Sure.
the whole thing. And I'm like, gosh, I cook all the time and I just have a regular fridge. Not that if I went into a kitchen and bought a house with a sub-zero, I'd say thank you. Thank you for buying that.
Anyway, rabbit hole time.
Oh, sorry. I guess we were down one, weren't we?
We were down a rabbit hole just from a quote. Funny how that happens.
Well, you go first. I don't want to talk about mine.
So I'll give you three. So
Okay.
Alice Morse Earle is the latest lost lady of garden writing. I did her last week, and I'll put a link to her. But here's what's interesting about her. She was a historian / garden writer, and she wrote books in 1901 and 1902 about gardening.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in 1909, she gets on the ship called, I think it was the RMS Republic. She's going to Egypt. And that ship collided with the SS Florida just off the coast of Nantucket.
Uh-oh.
So everybody had to be rescued off the RMS Republic. And when they were rescuing Alice Morse Earle, she fell into the ocean. I shouldn't laugh. And they said she didn't really recover. And for 2 years, it caused her a lot of problems. And she eventually died. But two other interesting facts about that shipwreck, Dee.
Yeah.
One that I wrote in here is that it was the first time that they used the Marconi wireless, which is radio, to provide live coverage of the shipwreck and the rescue as it was happening, because there was a guy on the ship with the radio. And so all the journalists and the rescuers could keep track. And that radio guy got like awards and stuff for the coverage. So it's the first live disaster.
What year is this?
I think it was 1909.
I bet you she didn't recover well because she had on all those skirts and hoops. And
I'm not
poor
quite.
thing.
Yeah, but
poor
the
thing.
other thing.
But it is interesting about the Marconi. Marconi discovered those waves.
It's off the coast of Nantucket, and it's apparently in a very difficult part of the ocean for divers to get to. Yeah. But there's rumors also that the Bank of France put the equivalent of today $1.9 billion of gold on that ship that they were sending to Nicholas II when they were trying to ward off the Bolsheviks or whatever. And so divers, and I read articles from like 99 and 2000, divers were arguing over, who had the rights to go down there and look for that gold, gold. Yeah. So I've got to get out of this rabbit hole. I don't really think anybody found the gold if it's down there. I think it's a difficult place to get to. So anyway,
that's number one. That's rabbit hole number one. Okay, number two.
So I finished reading The Forbidden Garden, The Botanist Besieged Leningrad. Yes.
That one you kept telling me about. Yeah.
It's okay. It's The Forbidden Garden, The Botanists of Besieged Leningrad and Their Impossible Choice by Simon Parkin. And I
Yeah.
said to you, it was not an easy read, but I'm glad to know the history and it will point out the importance of seed banks. But
Yes.
so Leningrad, which is St. Petersburg, was
Right.
held sieged by the Germans for almost 3 years during World War II. They could not
Yeah.
get food in. And
People starved.
this is like the second largest city in Russia,
Mhm.
millions of people, and people were literally dropping in the streets of starvation, including
So
some of the botanists who are manning a seed bank where they have seeds for wheat,
Russia's,
oats,
yeah.
all the grains. They have potatoes that they're storing, but that this botanist had collected for like 20 years. And they all decided at the very beginning of the siege that it was more important to keep the seeds so that they would have the genetics for later. It will be more important for future generations, and they should not eat those seeds. And by golly, they did not eat those seeds or those potatoes.
Well, okay. So didn't we decide that I read The Black Madonna,
Which is
which
the
was about,
Hermitage.
which is about the Hermitage, which is
Uh,
about the same siege, right?
yes, and
And
that was across the street.
yes, and the Hermitage, they went and hid because they saw what happened to Paris. They hid all of their paintings, all their statues, and everything. And they
Yes.
hid them all over the place. And so the people who were the docents memorized all of it so that when people came in who were starving, they could take them around and they described everything in so much detail that it was like being there. And so one of the reasons they did that is so they know where to put it back. And it
Yes.
was the same situation. They were all starving to death. So when you started reading this, I was like, oh, I know that time period really well. And it was
But
terrible. And
yeah,
I think there's one more thing to think about this that isn't garden related, but I've never heard of a more determined people than the Russian and the Ukrainian people. That's all I'm going to say. I just think, I mean, any group of people who can outlast the Germans three
oh, yeah.
years, you
Yeah. And
know?
at one point, they talked about a German botanist who knew about the seed bank, the Plant
Yeah,
Institute, and he was determined, and
to get it.
yeah, he wanted to go in there and grab it. And then he got hooked up with an English botanist, and the botanist that was in charge of the Plant Institute in Russia was well known around the world. And I won't tell you what happened to him, but anyway, I think it is
Mhm.
worth reading.
It
It's
sounds really good, but hard.
it's a hard read when you think about the evil, the impossible choice, the
Yeah.
human condition that we could
Sacrifice.
never imagine.
Hmm. Total
So,
sacrifice. And yeah, it's
and
unbelievable.
they will tell you that some of the genetics that survived have been instrumental in crop breeding since then. So,
Of course they are. Well,
ev-
and think about all the vegetables we grow in our own gardens that have come out of
yes,
Russia in the
yes,
last 20 years, stuff we had never heard about. I especially think of tomatoes.
yes. And they said every surviving botanist thought that they had made the right choice.
Okay.
So, my last little rabbit hole, Dee. Did you know another gift from the heavens? The planetary alignment. Have you heard about this?
No, I have not.
So on January the 21st, which is a special day for moi,
Yes, it
uh,
is.
6 planets, Mars, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, Venus, and Saturn, will all be visible in the night sky. 4 of those planets will be visible with the naked eye, and you will need either a telescope or high-powered binoculars to observe Uranus and Neptune, but you can see Mars, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn with the naked eye on the January 21st in the night sky. I just thought I would mention that.
Yeah. You should tell people what January 21st is and why you know this.
Well, it's my birthday. And so
It's your
obviously
birthday. Yeah.
the heavens are making a planetary alignment for me.
Just for you. Just for you, babe.
Yeah, me and I'm and the other thousands or millions of people born on that day. So anyway, let's do garden commissions.
Well, don't you want to hear about my rabbit hole?
Oh, yeah. I didn't think you wanted to talk about it.
I just didn't want to talk about it then. I have to tell people.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to update everyone on Bill. So Bill, if you want the big update, there's an Instagram post, a
There
reel.
is.
So you can just go look at that because I kind of explained it all. The small update is he had a second back surgery. They felt like they didn't release his nerves very well in the first surgery. I hate back surgery. And so they did it. And he, about 5 days ago, and he is at the rehab hospital. So I have not had time to go down a reel because I've been getting all of this stuff at the hospital, washing his clothes, running back and forth, which is about 40 minutes away. But they said we could get a closer one, but I wanted to stay in the same network because then you keep your same doctors and all that stuff. So anyway, that's what's going on with us. So garden commissions, I'll go again because I know your voice is tired from all of those rabbit holes you had.
Thank you, Dee. Yeah, yes, quite tired.
So I'm going to sow a few more seeds. I'm going to do nasturtiums next. And I'll probably wait another week though, because I don't want them to go out quite as early as say violas because they aren't quite as hardy. I burned them even last year. And we also got some very nice seeds, as we've said, from All America Selections and the National Garden Bureau. And in mine, there were 3 kinds of nasturtiums: baby gold, baby red or rose, and baby yellow. So I thought that I just remember it because it was baby gold and baby yellow and baby red, I think.
Yeah.
So,
and I don't think I got nasturtiums, but I'm going to go look.
If I have enough, I'll send you some. And I'm going to keep, doing what I've been doing in the greenhouse. Remember to water my plants once a week on Sundays because they dry out with all of this indoor heat.
That they do. So I'm going to really sort my seeds now that I've got these ones from All America Selections. Get ready for some winter sowing. I don't think I'm going to have to shovel snow for a while. I need to sow some more microgreens. I've run through a couple of containers, 10 my houseplants, including those lily of the valley pips. So that is what I hope to get done this next week.
So I know this is going to shock you, but remember last year when I bought the folders that have the clear sheets and I organized all my seeds? My seeds are still really organized. So it was very fast to look through those and go, okay, what zinnias do I have? And I had gotten in a couple of seed orders. And so I stuck those in places. And I say this in my Instagram reel, I'm going to reduce the size of my garden. That got snafu'd because Bill had to have surgery. So I'm going to talk to Luz next week and we're going to work out how to do it. And so the point of that is I won't need as many seeds as I might have thought I would, because I really am going to do it, Carol.
I really do believe you, Dee.
I got to do something.
So
my life has to be simpler. Okay.
My seeds should be more organized. I thought about doing a YouTube video of me sitting there organizing my seeds and see if people want to watch that kind of foolishness.
You could be witty and you could shake them so that there's ASMR.
Or I could say empty and throw it away.
True.
All right. I think that is quite enough from us. We want to thank you for listening to The Garden Angelist. I hope you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. We publish every week on Wednesdays at 12 a.m. Eastern Time.
If you subscribe to our free Substack newsletter, you'll get a link to listen to the podcast a day early and links to the products we discuss. Some are affiliate links that help pay for the podcast.
And if you want to help support us, use our affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we earn a small commission and it costs you nothing.
Or if you're so inclined, you can set up a monthly subscription through Buzzsprout or make a one-time donation through PayPal. So many of you have done so, and we really appreciate it.
That we do. Thank you to everyone who has done that. It helps us pay for the podcast hosting.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the Garden Gate. Bye until next week.
Bye, everybody.